I love The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess so much. It is my all-time favorite video game, and it always will be. I grew up on this game, so it is so nostalgic to me. Everything about this game is just so perfect, from the character designs, to the graphics, to the music. It's just so beautiful and so perfect, and it's just such a masterpiece. And if you've ever played this game, you would probably recognize this iconic cutscene. And this cutscene was so iconic that obviously I had to rebuild it in real life. Tiny disclaimer though, I did leave out a couple of details on accident, so this model will not be entirely accurate, and also I wanted to build it when it was in its cutscene shooting state, and you never actually see this in whole because it's all cut up in the cutscene, so it's not going to be entirely accurate. Okay, anyways, goodbye. Starting off with the base of the cannon, I'm going to be using both cardboard and foam board. And be sure to grab the foam board where the paper is terribly hard to tear off. Once I have successfully gotten all of the paper off of the foam board, I then just trace everything out and then glue the two pieces together to create a nice strong base. I chose to do the foam board and cardboard because I will use the foam board to carve in a wooden texture, and the cardboard will just be used to keep the base more sturdy. To make the structure of the actual house and all of the walls, I made a quick template. I really hate to measure, but unfortunately I had to do it anyway. But anyways, once I finished my template, I cut out all the pieces I needed and glued them all together in the correct way. Pretty much all of the walls on this structure, if not all of them, will be covered in some sort of popsicle stick. I used a variety of sizes and shapes? No, not shapes, just sizes. Bigger, smaller, lengths? I think that was the word I was looking for actually. I don't actually have a script, I'm just kind of saying stuff. Anyways, I used 2mm EVA foam right here to cover these really ugly corners, and then some bigger popsicle sticks to cover the floor part of the cannon house structure. I don't even know what I should call this. Using that same template from earlier, I made even more walls and covered them in more popsicle sticks, and then I started making the front door out of more of that foam board. The door is made up of a series of different sized decagons, so I just made them all and glued them all together, and then I used some coffee stirring sticks, which are super small popsicle sticks that I just used around the outside of each shape to clean them up a little bit. I've had these rhinestones for literally ever, and I'm just trying to use them up, so I used them a couple times this build to give a nut and bolt type of look to whatever I'm using them on. And then once my door was all made up, I placed it on the correct wall and then glued all of the walls to my base. I'm using a scrapped cereal box to make the trim to cover the ugly corners on the walls. I think I used a shredded wheat flavor, but honestly any flavor will work. I used the same cereal box as I did the trim to make the roof. Food packaging cardboard is actually unstoppable when making dioramas. You can use it in so many ways. It's just so perfect. And don't worry about how thin the roof is right now. It's just a base because it'll be covered in layers of cardboard. I gave the house its little hat, and then I made this other section of roof that will cover the porch area. For some reason, instead of finishing the roof, I started making the little water wheel that goes on the side of the house. I used pink insulation foam to make this part. Pink insulation foam is kind of messy looking when you cut it, or maybe I just am not good at it, I don't know. Either way, I had to sand it down to make it look a little cleaner, and once I was done cleaning it up, I used a dull pencil to carve in some wooden board texture instead of just using popsicle sticks. It's a lot faster, and I use a wire brush to give it a wood grain texture. And once that was all set, I placed it on. And don't forget the little triangle part, of course. And like I said before, I just used this wire brush to add some wood grain texture, and I used that same dull pencil to carve in more wooden boards into the foam. I made these cute little stairs out of foam board, and the bottom step is a little uneven, but we can just call that free weathering. And then I glued it right down to the porch. Okay, maybe I wouldn't call it free weathering, but everything in Twilight Princess is kind of like sloppily built and like kind of uneven and messy, so clearly people didn't like have an inspector come in, so yeah, we can just blame that. I found these little wooden dowels that I will use on the front steps along with more coffee stirring sticks to use as the hand railings. It was also right here that I realized that I had made the initial base way too small, and I will definitely have to pay for it later in the video. Back to working on the roof, I used more cardboard and foam board to make the opening parts of the roof, and I used another pencil to carve in that wooden board texture, as I have done multiple times already. We are now to the part of the craft that made me want to do this craft in the first place, and that is the metal sheeting roof. I absolutely love the metal texture that the roof has, and also just how colorful it was, and that's what made me want to build this in the first place. I made the metal sheeting out of the corrugated inside of cardboard. And I just cut all of these pieces into different varieties of sizes and shapes and anything that looked kind of messy like the actual model. Once I had all my pieces, it was finally time to put it onto the model. This was my absolute favorite part of the whole build, other than painting it. It's just so fun to kind of make it messy and not have to be uniform with it, and just kind of put it however you feel it looks good. And just look at how beautiful and put together it all is. I also realized here that I forgot to put the trim on the first part of the base, so I just do that with more popsicle sticks. And for my next favorite part, it is time to seal it all in black Mod Podge. I love this part of every build because you can see everything just start to come together and blend in and not look like a total piece of garbage. And now watch this super awesome painting trick. Ready? Wow, so cool. It's now time to make the actual cannon, and I realized that this little Danimals cup kinda looks like a cannon, so I emptied it, and that's what I used. The surface of the cup was far too smooth for my liking, so I sanded it all down so that glue and paint would stick to it later. I cut a new hole where the opening of the cannon would be, and then I used foam board to cover the previous hole, and then I used foam board to also make a cleaner trim around the new hole. I used construction paper to cover the cannon to give it a sheeted metal look. This is not how it looks in the game, but it works, okay? It works. The cannon in the actual game had a more difficult design that I wasn't really sure if I could replicate as well, so I figured this would be okay, and I actually really like how this turned out better, so I'm pretty happy with it. I used more watered down Mod Podge to seal all of the paper down, and then I used modeling paste to give it more texture. I just used my finger to stipple the modeling paste to give it a bumpier look, and once I was done with that, I stuck in some tiny rhinestones to add some more nuts and bolts. I really like how this turned out. I love adding sorts of like texture and little details like this, so I think it's just so cute. To make this ribbed detail from underneath the cannon, I used a part of this bubble rod stick thing to make that detail. And then I used some more foam and rhinestones just for more additional details. There are a couple of these little barrels on the front of the building, and this is actually where I ran into some problems with fitting everything on the front and how my base wasn't big enough. But anyways, I 3D printed these little barrels, and then I made a little sign out of more craft sticks, and I painted them, and yeah, they turned out really cute. Fyers' little music box was made out of some more of that foam board, and I actually made it way too big in the beginning, so I had to go back and cut everything down. This is after I had to cut it down to a better size for it to fit on the front porch. And it's so cute and tiny and super small to work with. All of the little details were made of stuff that I just had laying around, like little beads and buttons and wire, and it actually turned out really cool. And now it's finally time to start painting. I started painting the deck and the walls first, using a series of browns with dry brushing and all of that stuff. And then I moved on to the door using some purples and greens and some weathering. I used watered down black paint to make a wash to help weather and dirty up all of the model, and to also darken a lot of the vibrant colors. All of the buildings in Twilight Princess are pretty old and decrepit and dirty, so I really wanted to just dull out all of the really vibrant colors and make it true to the game. For the metal roof, I just painted everything in their respective colors of orange, blue, and pink. I use really cheap paint, so I did end up having to do a couple coats of each color just to get the proper coverage. But once again, I really enjoyed this process because painting things that are kind of meant to be messy and sporadic and ununiform is just super fun to me. Once I had the roof painted to my liking, I used a couple of dark washes to help dirty up and weather the whole roof. I also ended up dry brushing some metallic paint over all of the metal just to make it look more like actual metal. The weathering process just didn't really do the roof justice. I just couldn't figure out how to get it exact, so I'm not entirely happy with the roof, but it's okay, whatever. On the other hand, I really love how my cannon turned out. I painted it with a reddish purple, and then I dry brushed some black in all of the crevices in between metal, wherever the dirt and just wherever grime would settle in, just to dirty it up, give it some more dimension, and it just turned out really cool. I love it. And then I just dry brushed some silver over all of the cannon just to make it look a little more metallic, and once again, I freaking love how it turned out. So cool. Love it. Love, love, love. The metal texture is probably my favorite look. And now it is time to make fire. No, not actual fire, the man named Fire. I 3D modeled this and printed it. This was the first thing I've ever 3D modeled ever, and it actually turned out really good, so yes, I'm pretty proud of that. I'm not an expert, however, so his body did come out a little bumpy, so I ended up sanding him down and covering his entire body in caulk.
Nothing my caulk can't handle.
Anyways, yes, I covered him in all of that goo, and I sanded it all down and then painted him. Here I'm just gonna finish up painting all of my little attachment pieces, like my balconies and the little boat that's hanging off of the side of the roof. I also hated how the foam looked here, so I decided to cover it in more coffee stirring sticks and then paint and weather it. Weathering wood like this is so satisfying and delectable. I just love how this looks. And moving forward will be the assembly and putting all of my pieces together. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing. As for the next video, I plan on making something more on the costume side. You can also check out some of the older things I've crafted on my TikTok and Instagram. I hope to see you all again in the next video. Goodbye!